I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think it was possible. But here we are. 3.5 years ago, I made a video about the terrible games that the animal rights organization PETA had on their site. That video blew up way more than I would have expected, and then 2 years later, I came back with a follow-up that garnered similar success. Since then, I've gotten a lot of requests for a third, but despite trying, I didn't think it was possible. Not only did I already cover almost everything that was available, but the ones that I hadn't played yet had since been taken off PETA's site, save for a couple. Well, for the sake of being thorough, I decided what I was gonna do was play the ones that I still could play, and then proceed to scour the internet for footage of the games which were lost to time. This will be the last one. I hope. So like I said, only a couple of games on PETA's site that I hadn't previously played could actually still be played. Even a lot of the games that I've covered in the past have since been taken down. So first, let's get to the couple of games that are actually playable, or at least were at the time of writing the script. First up, we have Elephants Never Forget. You can probably already tell why I didn't bother covering this one before, but at this point, I think these videos are for the sake of preservation and history more than anything. So as you can see, it's your typical card matching game. It seems harmless on the surface, cute cartoon elephant with playing cards in its trunk playing a little matching game with music courtesy of Tommy Tellerico. I guess he really needed all the money he could get to put into the Intellivision Amico. Well, once the game actually starts, it doesn't take long to realize this harmless little card game is 50% match little cartoons that are ambiguous enough to not be offensive, and 50% matching a bunch of pictures of elephants being tortured or abused. Incidentally, this game is actually not about elephants being really good at card games and is really about elephants not forgetting that they were mistreated. Look, I get that they're trying to teach kids about the realistic aspects of how circuses actually operate and that the cute, funny animals doing tricks is actually a much sadder situation than most people realize, but this is a little heavy-handed for a children's game. It's literally on the website PETA Kids. And by a little heavy-handed, I mean you must be an actual psychopath if you think it's okay to not only expose children to this stuff, but to masquerade it as a fun little matching game. The best part is, the actual game gives you literally no information. There's 4 screens in the entire game, none of which give you more insight on the subject or do anything to talk about the point that the entire game exists to make. It's just like, here kids, let's play a fun game. Whoops, there's a silly little elephant getting abused. Now try to challenge your friends. So I covered the sequel to this game in my previous video. I figured if I'm gonna cover one of them, I might as well cover the sequel since it's more up to date and maybe a little more fleshed out, but as fate would have it, here we are. Finally taking a look at the original. As I expected, it's a lot like the sequel, only with surprisingly somehow worse controls. I didn't even think that was possible. So last time we were taking down McDonald's, and this time it's KFC. Kentucky Fried Cruelty, as PETA affectionately refers to it. Colonel Sanders kidnaps Pamela Anderson for trying to snitch about the secret bad stuff that goes on behind closed doors at KFC's factories. And now, it's up to Nugget and Chickette to save her. Like the first game, there's a side plot about Mario trying to be the one to save her, and it exists only for PETA to throw shade at Nintendo and try to subtly accuse the Mario franchise of animal abuse, because of course they do. The game has 5 levels consisting of really basic platforming that tries to copy the formula of Mario, except with horrendous controls and that terrible cheap platformer camera thing where the camera is just fixed to the player at all times. Like the sequel, during stages you run into random NPCs that spout some stuff about the horrible things KFC does to chickens, which, once again, don't belong in a kid's game. I know they want to convey a message, but it's called being tactful, and it's something they lack. You're marketing this to children, and there's a way to get your point across without being so on the nose. Aside from that, the game's pretty straightforward. The only thing that changes up the gameplay at all is the very end of the game. At the end of level 5, you fight Colonel Sanders in an extremely janky fight where he wears a mask trying to disguise himself as Bowser. This fight was so difficult due to the controls that I almost lost all of the 10 lives I stockpiled and almost got a game over. I managed to pull through though and beat the game. My reward for that was a code that let me play as Pamela Anderson. Lucky me. Playing as Pam doesn't actually do anything to change up gameplay or give you any kind of ability that makes the game easier or anything at all. It's quite literally just a sprite swap. What a reward. So that concludes the games I was actually able to play. From here on out, I'm gonna cover games I wasn't able to play myself, but did manage to find at least a little footage of. If you're wondering what you're currently watching, this is pretty much an honorable mention for this video. Turns out PETA has their very own Minecraft mod, an island complete with PETA's headquarters, an abandoned slaughterhouse, and even an abandoned circus. Lovely. This one barely passes as a game and is more akin to one of those little interactive flash animations a la early 2000s Joe cartoon, and to be honest, that's pretty accurate because this game came out in 2001. It's no wonder I not only couldn't play this game, but could barely find any footage of it. I'm currently working with literally 17 seconds of footage, and it's the only video I managed to find anywhere. So the game stars a guy named Fred.
I can't tell if Fred is camping or living in a trailer park, but I guess that doesn't matter. What does matter is the fact that Fred is lactose intolerant. PETA's trying to take a shot at the dairy industry with this one, saying that dairy is bad for the human digestive system. While that's not incorrect, I don't see how this game really does any kind of good job pushing that point when all you do is click and drag 5 food items to Fred's mouth, making him projectile vomit. That's the whole game. Are you a big fan of Frogger, but were never a huge fan of frogs? Are you more of a lobster kind of person and wish you could replace the iconic amphibian with a sea bug instead? Well, now you can. Or can't, because the game is nowhere to be found on the internet anymore. It's called Lobster Liberation, and the premise of the game is that you're a lobster and you have to escape from whatever is trying to turn you into food, I guess. The goal is to reach the target at the top of the screen while avoiding cars, snakes, polluted water, and poisonous lobster bushes. Ah yes, the lobster's natural enemy. You also get more points the closer the target is to the edge of the screen. So I'm immediately noticing 2 things. 1, the lobster is roughly the same size as a truck, and 2, all the art is very bad. I'd let this go, but one thing is really grinding my gears. In the logo and the player character, the lobster is a nice deep red color. Now, I'm no marine biologist, but as far as I know, lobsters only turn deep red after they're boiled. This is the kind of thing that irks me more than anything with these games. PETA acts like they're trying to spread awareness and fight a cause, but half the time, they either don't have any idea what they're actually talking about, or they're just so lazy that they don't catch simple mistakes. Like, did they really get so caught up in making a cartoon lobster game for kids that they didn't even realize they made an animal rescue game where you play as a literal dead lobster? Did they not know that lobsters aren't just bright red? Yet another Flash game that, as far as I can tell, is wiped from the internet is Revenge of the PETA Tomatoes. So before you start playing this fever dream of a game, you get to pick what this game calls your tomato torpedo. You have a choice of Rambo Red, Cherry Bomb, The Terminator, beef steak, salad, and apple. As far as I can tell, this choice does nothing to change the gameplay, and you're just given crosshairs with a tomato on it. I'm gonna just come right out and say that I have absolutely no idea what's going on. This is clearly a shooting gallery game. Plenty of Flash games are like this, but your targets range from foxes to a child, and a bunch of other static images of random people popping up in what looks to be an amalgamate of different city skylines. Obviously, New York is here because the Twin Towers are still present, but as far as I can tell, they took 4 different pictures of city skylines and layered them over each other. They didn't even bother to at least grab a JPEG with some clouds in it to put above it all either. They just threw a nonsensical drop shadow onto the buildings and paint bucketed the top of the screen blue. Once the level ends, it prompts you to click the screen to proceed to level 2, but whoever was playing this game just experienced a crash once they did. I'm somehow not surprised. After seeing the description, apparently the game was about throwing tomatoes at people who wear fur, so I guess the foxes and children weren't actual targets and were supposed to be the civilians of the game that dock points if you hit them by accident. I can't honestly believe someone who represents a huge animal rights organization made this shoddy hunk of crap and was like, yeah, this is good. This will shine a light on the atrocity that is the fur industry. Butcher Goes Vegan is actually a mobile game which surprisingly I think can still be downloaded. Problem is, it's on the Google Play Store and I have an iPhone. I guess this is the exception here as I'm pretty sure it can still be played, having reviews as recent as this year. So if you find yourself wanting to play this game and you own an Android device, knock your socks off. It's a game where you play as one of a few different circular animals ascending to reach various checkpoints while avoiding the butchers on the sides of the screen that try to grab you, all with the goal of saving the other animals that lie upward. From what I can tell, tapping the screen makes the player ascend, and if you stop tapping, you fall, kind of like in Flappy Bird. Hitting a wall causes the player to bounce back in the opposite direction, so you basically have to time your jumps in such a way that you collide with the walls and not the enemies. You can also collect gems, which act as this game's currency, and if you've ever played a free-to-play mobile game before, you know the drill here. All in all, this seems like one of the more polished of the PETA games I've played. Unfortunately, par for the course with these games, there's some nice depressing and disturbing garbage thrown in and badly disguised in a cute cartoon aesthetic. So this one was the hardest to find any kind of information or gameplay on. It's an iOS game called Seal's Hero, and it's still technically available on the App Store, but all current versions of iOS can't run it. I'm honestly not sure how old your iOS has to be to run it, but the game is pretty old at this point, so unless you have an old iPhone 4 lying around somewhere or something, you're probably out of luck. What's weird was the fact that I could not, for the life of me, find footage of this game anywhere. At first. It wasn't until I typed in the game's name and the first and last name of the developer into YouTube's search bar. It was then that I found what looks to be the only footage that exists of this game being played. a 50-second long, low-quality camera recording of a phone screen, uploaded directly to the developer's YouTube channel. I've gotta say, I sat here studying the footage and I can't tell what's even going on. There's a bunch of penguins standing in place while a wolf runs back and forth, and you control a guy walking around breaking blocks and painting seals for some reason. Reading the game's description on PETA's website tells me we play as an animal rights activist whose mission is to save as many seals as possible within a limited time. I'm assuming painting the seals ruins their fur and makes them undesirable. Unfortunately, most of the aspects of this game I can't actually get examples of, and I'm stuck with this minute-long, badly filmed clip, so most of this game is lost to the ether. Unless you have like an old iPod Touch or something. So that's it. I've covered every single PETA game I possibly can. I haven't covered all the games in existence, but I've covered the ones I'm comfortable with talking about on my channel. There's a couple left, but I'm not touching those. It's been a wild ride, but this chapter has finally come to a close, unless PETA decides to make more games, which if I'm being honest with myself, they probably will. But until that day comes, my job here is done. Hey there, thanks for watching the hopefully final chapter of this trilogy. If you want to see more, there's a couple other videos right there, and if you want to see when I upload again, subscribe and then tap the bell icon.